Welcome to the Seizure Turnaround, where we explore the topic of functional seizures through conversations with people who provide an unfiltered record of their experience. Today, we're joined by investigative journalist Nadine Sebai. Her story is the subject of the upcoming documentary System Disrupted, which chronicles her transition from frontline reporter to FND patient. Welcome to the Seizure Turnaround, Nadine.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So, Nadine, you've spent your career investigating systems, labour rights, housing, public health. What was it like when the system that you had to investigate was your own body?
Yeah, that's a good question. As I was looking into FND, I was seeing these misconceptions that we've heard so often, that it's psychological or that we're just making it up. And if I didn't have the condition as a journalist, I would look at that and ask what the truth is. But because I had an emotional investment in this, I started to wonder whether that was actually true, whether those things that were said about it's just stress and you can't handle stress, you're a woman and women can't handle stress as well as men. And so this is why this is happening to women predominantly and XYZ. And so that was difficult as a journalist to try and put myself aside. But in reality, I was looking into my own condition.
Can you take us back to those early days when the system did get disrupted, in a sense?
So before I developed what I now know as FND, I had other underlying conditions. I had a CSF leak in my spine that caused my brain to kind of sag out of my skull. And so that process of figuring that out and then fixing it was a very painful process. I had very painful spinal taps. I was having headaches every day. It was just really debilitating. And then throughout that, I also learned that I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. My first major seizure was right after I took the second dose of the COVID vaccine. So what happened was a few months before I took the vaccine, I had an embolization in my spine, and that was to fix the leak. And what was happening was that the brain was relearning how to, like, how much CSF fluid to put in the body because now it's plugged up, right? They were seeing that there were improvements being made, and a few months went by and they were saying the MRIs look good and that things are going the way they're supposed to. But then suddenly I got this exam and they told me that I had extreme intracranial hypertension. So much so that they were surprised I didn't go blind. So I immediately went on this medication, Diamox, to try to quell it. And so all of this was going on. Then we got, I don't know if you remember, during the height of the COVID era, getting an appointment to get a vaccine felt like, oh, you got to take this opportunity because you don't know if it's going to come again. I took the first dose and my old symptoms started to come back. My daily headaches were coming back. And I wasn't attributing it at all to the vaccine. I just thought, maybe this is the process of my brain trying to readjust.
Hmm.
And then I took the second dose, and less than 24 hours later, I collapsed and I didn't wake up for like 12 hours, maybe 12, 15 hours. And I was just having what looked like seizures. My vitals looked fine, but I just was constantly seizing. And then I woke up. My husband had thought that I was going to pass away. I had been transferred from one hospital to another into the intensive unit. And he had called my mom, who was in another country at the time, and said, "You have to come." And he called his mom. I had no idea this was all going on. And then we thought it was like a one-off thing. And then a few days later, I had another seizure. And then a few days later, another seizure. And every time we were going into the hospital. And within 3 months' time, I must have been in the sometimes admitted, but sometimes not, maybe 15 times.
Yeah, wow. How long did it actually take before they made that definitive diagnosis?
It's interesting because I've actually tried to walk back my steps of how I learned about FND. We did EEG. They didn't find anything, but also at the same time, I wasn't able to make a seizure happen while I had the EEG on. So they were kind of like, we don't know for sure. And I remember one doctor from the neurology department in the hospital came to me and said that because they can't find anything in the EEG, that it is likely due to stress. She didn't call it functional neurological disorder, but she called it stress. And I was a working journalist at the time, and the job is very stressful. So I thought, okay, That makes sense. I know some people push back against that and are like, that's what you're telling me this is? You're telling me it's stress? I was like, okay, that's what it is. It's stress. What is it that is causing me to be stressed out? And that's how it started. And then it maybe took about a year and a half before my doctor in Boston told me, you have functional neurological disorder. Go to this website, which was neurosymptoms.org, which is Dr. Johnstone's website, and read the whole thing. So it kind of took about a year and a half or two to diagnose.
That's such a long time. What was
Yeah.
happening in that year and a half?
Oh, it was a complete disaster. I had no idea what was going on. And emotionally, I was completely drained because right around the time that I had these seizures and I was going to figure out what was going on with me, I got the fellowship of a lifetime working with my favorite investigative outlet called PBS Frontline, and they do investigative documentaries. I had pitched this investigation, and then I found out I was at Mayo Clinic in the time in Minnesota for my editor that I had been approved. And then I'm spending the next 3 years doing this investigation with FND, not understanding how to deal with it. So during this time, I was having sometimes upwards of 5 seizures a day. I would pee myself, sometimes defecate on myself. I would get injured constantly trying to get to the bathroom so that I wouldn't urinate on myself. So the way that my reporting days would work is that I'd often have seizures in the morning. I would do interviews back to back, finding information, driving from here to there. And then I would have another seizure, maybe pee myself, have to rush home, change. The stress of the job was so much, but it was the opportunity of a lifetime for me personally that I couldn't let go of it. And then so everything just piled on and on and on. And it was a disaster. It's just completely horrible.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you continue your work, or at some point did you just have to stop for a while? Or
So the investigation was published, and after it was published, it had a lot of great outcomes. And I remember this conversation with my editor afterwards, who told me, this is not over. We have to go into part two now, the ramifications, and look further and do all this. And I remember feeling in my body that conversation and being like, I can't do this anymore. I can't. I got to the finish line, and there was one point towards the publication date that I was working 15 hours a day. And I was on the phone with one of my other editors constantly and the other reporter that I was working with at the time. And we would be on conversations for hours and be like, I need a minute. I'm going to have a seizure. I have a seizure. Come back 20 minutes later. Okay, let's go. What else do we need to do? 6 months later, I said, I cannot live this way anymore. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to get better. I can't live like this. So I quit my job, and that became my job, investigating my own medical condition. And my goal was to go into remission. I wanted to get as close to remission as possible.
how have you been able to reconcile your identity as a reporter with the vulnerability of this condition?
I think one of the things that you learn when you get really ill is that your identity isn't only your profession and isn't only how you identify personally in your professional life. I was always a person that was very workaholic. I was fairly insecure as a kid and as an adult. And I recognized that when I achieved a lot, people paid me a lot of attention and gave me a lot of praise. And so that led me into this workaholic, your whole identity is what you do for work. But when I got sick, it forced me to put that aside, not fully leave it, but to say there are more things important in life than the success that you make in your work. The hardest thing for me was coming to a point, because I'm also very stubborn, where I knew that my personal identity, like why I'm here on this earth, was to investigate things. I love it. When I do it, I enjoy it so much. But because that profession, by chance, happens to be so stressful, I questioned so many times whether I can even do the thing that I love very much. And that made me feel weak and not strong. And it hit on insecurities that I've had as a child, which was that I was never enough. And then this illness comes and it's proving to me that you're not enough. You're not even enough to do this job that other people do with stress, but they're fine. They don't have seizures.
Did the seizures reduce once you did stop work?
Not right away. But so what happened was is that I quit my job, and then maybe 6 weeks afterwards, I went to Los Angeles to physical therapy. I was there for about a month and a half. And I learned a lot about how to work with my body through occupational therapy, learning how to deal with things that trigger me, like sound used to trigger me a lot, bright lights, going into a grocery store, and doing things back to back calls or back to back activities. My body really didn't like that. So learning how to deal with it.
What helped with the reacting to lights and sudden noise, for example, because that is a very common trigger for people's seizures?
For sure. I'm going to give you an example. Every time I would go to a restaurant, of course, it's very loud in a restaurant, I would end up having a seizure maybe 20, 30 minutes into it. I thought that the reason why I was getting seizures in restaurants was because I was animated and excited talking to the people I was with and laughing and just being very energetic. And then that was causing the seizure to happen. But when I was at physical therapy, they told me, we think that this is related to sound. And so they told me to buy specific types of earplugs. And they said, when you go to the restaurant, put the earplug in right away and see what happens. And so I did exactly what they said. And I lasted the entire time at the restaurant without a single seizure. And I could not believe it. So I wanted to try it again. And I went to a comedy club. And of course, they're super loud and you're laughing a lot and you're really engaging, right? And I wore the earplugs the entire time. And there was only one small point where I felt a seizure coming, but they had taught me how to breathe into it and relax and the things to say. And it went away. So I was like, wow, there's something here. It's the sound. I was looking in the wrong direction. And so what they had explained to me was at first, you wear the earplug 100% of the time. Then maybe in a month or two, you wear it 90%, then 80, then 60, then 50. And then eventually that window of tolerance increases. And then you don't need it anymore, maybe as often as you think. And that's exactly what I did. And they were spot on. It works great.
Yeah, wonderful that graded exposure and habituation work. It's amazing. And what about the flashing lights? Did you do something similar or?
Okay, going to a grocery store triggers headaches because it's kind of a combination of a lot of things. It's a lot of stimulus, it's a lot of light, and it's a lot of sound. There's a lot going on, and you're going to a grocery store on a mission to do stuff, right? So I would walk in, and I don't know how many times I would have a seizure. And I was like, what is with this place that I could not handle it? So, anyway, what I was taught was okay, go to the grocery store for no purpose at all. You are not going to buy groceries. You are not under pressure to do anything. You are going to practice, to expose yourself to the environment. So I would go in, just feel it coming, walk out. Okay, let's see what happens, go in, maybe look around, look in the aisles. I would feel it starting. And I'm like, what is up with this? But at the beginning, I didn't know how to control it. I didn't know what to do. Like I felt that feeling and panic would still set in. And then I would leave, or maybe I would have a seizure, and then that would be it. It wasn't until much later that I had what I call my epiphany moment of learning how to deal with my seizures. But yeah, it took a long time.
And how did you learn to manage that first feeling or those signs that come on that precede the actual seizure?
Yeah, I hadn't figured it out. Like that was the thing, is that I had learned, for example, with the sound thing, when I would put an earplug in, I didn't need to fight a seizure because they weren't coming. But it's different than when you feel it coming and you're trying to say, we're not in an environment that's dangerous. We don't need to go here. But I would panic because I was in a public space. I had remembered how many times I peed myself in the grocery store, how many times they called 911 or the ambulance or whatever, waking up to frightened people who didn't know what to do. And so every time you enter that grocery store or whatever, it doesn't matter where it is, you have all of that baggage of past experiences of you did not save the seizure this time and look what happened to you.
Mm.
So it's like the brain is panicking, but then your mental state is panicking, and then you've lost it. There's no way to return from that.
And give us an understanding of the lengths that you've gone to try and understand this and get yourself well.
I have done so much treatment. I did a pain rehabilitation program. It was in Minnesota. It was every day for like 8 hours a day. And we did group therapy, PT, OT. And then I also did this 12-week treating your non-epileptic seizures program. And I did that twice, actually. You have to do it alongside a seizure counselor. They highly recommend not to do it alone because it's like a workbook thing. That was super helpful in helping me understand what was going on in the body. So it's not that it was all psychological. It wasn't that you are bringing on these seizures. It's that your mind and your brain are interlinked together. And the way to diminish your seizures is by understanding that it's going to require both. That it's not only a pill that's going to help you, it's your mind, your way of dealing with it that is going to help make things better, and your lifestyle also.
Right.
I did CBT therapy. Of course, that's like the first thing everybody tells you to do when you get diagnosed with FND. I did dialectical behavioral therapy, both individual and group. And what that taught me is this idea that you can feel things in your body first before your mind starts kicking in. And being able to hone in on those sensations ahead of time really saves you a lot of anguish. So whether it's when you're feeling angry or you're feeling stuck or stressed or in that fight or flight mode, being able to really recognize that and feel it in your chest or in your throat or whatever, that really helped me a lot in getting better. I also did some Reiki, which I'm not really this alternative medicine kind of person. It's just not my thing. And maybe because I'm not in that mindset, it didn't really help me that much. But I did try that. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Wow. So how long collectively has all that treatment taken you?
3 years or so.
Mm. And is there a lot of overlap between all of those different treatment modalities? Was there a magic ingredient or anything that made the most significant difference to your seizures?
So, in order to answer that question, I need to talk about my epiphany day or night, actually, about when I recognized how to control my seizures, because it'll answer your question.
Okay.
Okay, so here's my magic night. I was laying in bed and I was watching something on YouTube or something. I don't know what I was doing. I was supposed to be sleeping, but I got distracted on my phone. And for whatever reason, since I had gotten my first seizure, I would get triggered by laying down for too long or sitting for too long in a car or going from sitting to standing. And doctors thought, maybe you have POTS. And then we did the whole POTS thing and I don't have POTS and whatever. So if I was watching TV, let's say for 20, 30 minutes, seizure for sure. So this night was no different. I was laying in bed. I was awake too long, laying down, and I felt a seizure coming. And usually what happens is that I panic. My first question is, did you pee? Then you start to panic about how painful it's going to be, how long it's going to last, if you're going to chip your tooth, which I've done before. All of these things enter your mind. And then eventually you get to a point of no return. But this time, I don't know what went into me, but I was like, I am not going to do this time. I turned off my phone. I closed my eyes. And then I envisioned myself looking at myself from above the bed. I wasn't dissociating. I was actively doing this as a means of trying to center myself. So I'm envisioning myself looking at myself from above. And then I started talking to myself out loud. And I said, you are not in danger. There is nothing wrong. Trying to just say the facts. You are laying down. I started to recognize the walls, the ceiling, the roof, the comfort of the bed. And I was like, you have laid down millions of times in your life and nothing has happened. There is nothing wrong. You are safe. And I'm not talking to me. I was as if it was my brain sitting next to me, like a child, trying to explain to it that you don't need to panic because everything is fine. And then suddenly it was like, I usually get this big tingle in the back of my neck. That's how it starts. And then I'll get a numbness on the right side of my face. And then it'll feel like there's air coming into my head, like somebody's putting a balloon in my head. And so I had that immense feeling. And then suddenly it just went away, just slowly died down. The tingling in my face went away. The tingling in my neck, that inflated feeling in my head just went away. I wasn't really understanding whether this was something that was actually going to work or not. So then the next day, there were what I call like attempts. My brain was trying to have maybe 5 seizures that day. And every time I did exactly what had worked in the bed. I stopped what I was doing. I sat on the floor to make sure I didn't hurt myself, closed my eyes, envisioned myself looking at myself. Da 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 da. You are not in danger. You are safe. All you're doing is sitting. All you're doing is whatever you're doing. This is not dangerous. You are fine. And then they would just slowly creep away. So then a week went by and I had multiple attempts, but no seizures. And I had never lasted a week without a seizure. That was just not even possible. And then the second week, my period was coming. And I usually have a lot more seizures then. And so I said, I'm going to try the same tactic. If it works during my period, that means I'm on something. Made it that second week, just attempts, but no seizures. And so this happened for a while. And I went from like 40 seizures a month, maybe between 25, 40 seizures a month, 45 maybe, to 3, 4, many attempts, but stopping them in their tracks doing this thing that I was doing. So to go back to answering your question about was there a particular thing that helped or that got me there? It was like little tidbits from everywhere. For example, learning about window of tolerance. The window of tolerance I had learned in that 12-week seizure program. I had learned in Minnesota in that pain rehab clinic. I had learned it at physical therapy. Now, you learn it and it's in your mind somewhere. But sometimes what happens organically is that you have to take what people are teaching you and frame it into your own self, into your own body and your own story and your own way of understanding it. They can explain it however they explain it, but it has to go through Nadine's brain of how to deal with that information, how to understand what's going on. So that really helped me out a lot. And then I will say one thing, and I didn't mention this because it wasn't an official treatment. I spoke to my cousin, who I'm Lebanese, and he treated patients with FND in Lebanon, FND and epilepsy and other things. He was doing a fellowship here in the US, and he was like, I want to help you once and for all. This is what you're going to need to do, and this is how you're going to get better. He told me, you have to stop talking about your seizures. Don't even call them seizures. I understand that they are, but do not call them that because it makes it worse than it is. And then it makes you think it's worse than it is, and it just turns everything bad. But stop talking about your seizures. Don't talk about it with friends at dinner. Don't talk about it with your husband. Don't talk about it ever, unless you need to talk to your doctor. That's it. Aside from that, stop talking about it. Don't make it a part of your identity. Don't say I'm sick. None of that. Another thing he said, and this one, it's like how you take things that people say and then you use it in your own mind and say it in your own way. He told me, don't let anybody see you have a seizure in the most safe way possible. When you have a seizure coming, if you can, go by yourself, sit, make sure you don't injure yourself, close your eyes, and tell yourself, I am fine. There's nothing wrong. You are okay. Da, 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 da. Now, I translated that in my epiphany day of you are safe, you are not in danger. I made my own language. He came up with his own. But what was he teaching me in that moment? What he was trying to tell me is that when you bring so much attention to the moment, so much attention to the seizure, because what used to happen is that people would try and help me before the seizure. Are you okay? Is everything fine? Do you want to sit? Do you need to pee? Then you have the seizure. Then you wake up and it's the aftermath of other people. Do you need something? Are you okay? Consoling you, hugging you, all of that. All of that is giving feedback, not to my mind, but to my brain, that this is something that should be rewarded. I'm getting attention for it. And it's not attention like in the cycle, I'm talking brain attention, right?
Yeah.
I was like, wow, it's like my whole FND life is encompassed in these patterns, a before, a during, and an after. and then talking about it. Imagine, so you have so much attention before, during, and after, and then you're talking about it with people and friends and whatever. It's no wonder you can't get it out of your brain. You can't be Nadine. You are Nadine with FND. Not good.
How did your husband go with that? Carers often find that difficult to leave. Or was it really on you to remove yourself so your husband didn't know you were having it? How did that work practically, I suppose, rather than theoretically?
Yeah, so this is a huge thing with FND because it doesn't only happen to you, it happens to the people around you. The aftermath of it and the everything, in some ways, going unconscious during a seizure, I don't see what happens then. I don't see the urine and the grinding and the eyes looking all scary and whatever. Somebody else is experiencing that in their life and they're taking that in. It was Miguel who got the calls from random people in the grocery store saying, your wife had a seizure, we called 911, from friend's house, from different people. My husband was always that point of contact, receiving all of these emergency calls. And so that's really difficult to tell someone, stop paying attention to me, stop taking care of me, because that person wants to, because hello, what if something happens?
Yeah.
And so there was a period of time where sometimes my husband wanted to talk about his feelings of being a caregiver with FND, but I didn't want to talk about FND. And so you have to make that balance of validating another person's experience, but also trying to protect your own health. And so eventually, what ended up happening is that we would have conversations like, let's not eliminate it completely so that you have your opportunity to talk, but that we are doing this for the long-term gain of trying to relieve myself of these seizures, and then we don't have to worry anymore.
Yeah, it must be really difficult for both of you, but it sounds like you were able to come to sort of like a team agreement, like we're a team together trying to solve this. Nadine, can you tell us about what injuries you've sustained with these functional seizures?
I have had multiple injuries to my head. I've split my lip open, had to get stitches. I sprained my ankle. I've gotten scrapes and cuts everywhere. I have thrown my back out multiple times. I've chipped my teeth. Yeah.
And are most of those injuries in the lead up to the seizure, trying to get to a safe space, or during the seizure itself?
Most of them happen leading up to it because one of the biggest fears and annoyances were peeing myself because it creates a whole event after the event. Cleaning your laundry, going to take a shower, cleaning whatever furniture was ruined, and then you have to go back to work. And then you have to go back to doing what you were doing. So for me, it was like, I got to get to the bathroom. But in the event of trying to get to a bathroom, you injure yourself because you'll lose consciousness beforehand. A lot of them, like chipping my teeth, that was from intense grinding, splitting my lip open. I felt a seizure coming while I was peeing, but I didn't want to fall over onto the floor. So I like rushed my pee and then tried to run to the bed, and I missed the bed. I went unconscious beforehand, and then I just fell on my face, and then I was bleeding everywhere. That one event was probably the most vulnerable and sad I have ever been in my life.
Tell us about that lowest point.
So this had come about maybe a few months after this epiphany day where I was having my high, but I got sick with a parasite, both my husband and I at the same time. So we were both extremely ill. We were both in the hospital, and it was really hard on the body. It took us maybe 3 weeks to recuperate from it. And I had my first seizure since that epiphany day driving to the hospital to bring my husband some extra clothes and different things that he needed. And I knew that I was pushing myself too much. I had no gas in the tank, no energy, but I was going from here to there. I felt it in my body. I felt that tenseness. And I had a major seizure in the parking lot. And I fell on the floor and I scraped the top of my head. And I was just really sad because I was like, oh, it came back. Oh, is this going to come back? So it did come back. It came back with a vengeance. It was no joke seizures, super intense. I was exhausted after them. And so it's like when something is given to you and then suddenly taken away, it's better to have never known that it was better because you were already used to it. And so this day where I split my lip open, when I lost consciousness trying to get to the bed, I woke up and there was blood everywhere on my hands, on my face, just everywhere. And so I started hyperventilating because I thought I had hit my skull. Now, my husband's in the other room taking a shower, and I'm yelling for him, but he can't hear me. And I'm shaking, and I don't want to get up because I don't want to see what the problem is. I'm so terrified that it's going to be worse than I thought. But anyway, I get up, I find a towel, I'm walking to him, and he's in the shower, and he sees me with all this blood all over my face, all over my clothes. And he's like, "What the hell is going on?" I just start crying immediately. I had what was like the most animal cry I have ever felt. It was animalistic, of complete frustration, sadness, and that I can't take this anymore. Like, uh, that's it. I'm done. And I had already told myself I was done, and I thought I was done, and turns out I'm not. And then I'm racking my brain of, now this means we have to go to the hospital. I have to stay in the hospital. And then, and I hate the hospital and I don't want to go there. And so it's this fighting back against what you perceive to be your new reality. This is going to be my life forever. And that day makes me so emotional because I can remember how, God, I just gave up. So, anyway, so yeah, that was a tough time.
How long did it take you to get through that?
The thing is that you can't heal in a vacuum. You heal with the people around you. And that was one of the things I had to learn from having FND, is that I was always a person that I am still an avoidant personality. I was very shy as a kid and I didn't want to express my feelings, but I had to realize in having FND that I can't do this by myself. You need your friends, you need your partner, you need your family, you need everyone to collectively come together and help you. And what is most helpful for me when I am in these depths of despair is to have someone who's outside of that to say, it's going to get better. We are here. We're going to help you. You've been through this before. You'll overcome it. Anything to get you out of that mindset. And I think that was one of the biggest things. Number two, not giving up on the thing that worked, because I was still trying to do these processes of sitting where you are, envision yourself from above, blah, 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 my whole process, right? But they weren't working. And so I thought, okay, maybe the brain got used to this, or now it doesn't. I don't know. Like, I was just making up things. But then I said, just keep doing what worked. It's okay if it's a fluke or whatever, who knows what it is, but just keep doing what works. And then it got better.
That's great.
Yeah, which is good. But like right now, for example, so far this month, I have had more seizures than the last 2 months combined. I don't know what's going on, but having confidence to say, it's not going to last forever. You know how to deal with this. Let's move on.
It's going to pass.
It's going to pass.
Yeah. And you've been doing this since you stopped work. Tell us all about a documentary that you're working on, your film, System Disrupted.
This is a film I'm really excited about. I am a co-director. Our director also has FND. Her name is Faye Hedera. And we got connected a few months before I quit my job through FND Hope. I was looking to volunteer my time with my skills as a journalist, and she was in the process of wanting to do a feature-length documentary about FND. And it ended up working out great time-wise because I told her, look, I quit my job. I'm on this journey to investigate my own condition and get rid of this. And if you want to follow me as we do that, great. Let's do that. And so that's exactly what we did. And yeah, we've been to LA where I did my physical therapy, and we went to Colorado, Rhode Island, and we also went to Scotland and interviewed Dr. John Stone. And right now we're in the midst of raising more money to produce the film. And what we hope in the end is that we will screen the film at medical schools across the country in hopes of getting neurology residents and neurology medical students interested in this field, because it is under-researched and it's very stigmatized and it just comes with a whole lot of baggage. So if we can show this film at medical schools, at conferences, as a way to get doctors to empathize, to learn and be interested in FND, that would be a huge success for us. So,
And how can people help if they want to help get the documentary out?
We're doing a crowdsourcing campaign. This is really important for us because we do want people who have the condition or are caregivers or supporters or researchers to be a part of this so that we can make it happen. And then just getting the word out is really helpful. Engaging in the Navigating FND channel, essentially what it is for now is a bunch of tips that I have gathered from all of my treatments that I've done and things that have worked and that have helped me get better. And they may help other people, maybe not, but at least it's something for people to try.
Yeah, we'll put the links to everything in the show notes. Is there anything that we haven't discussed today or anything that you think would be really important for people who are just getting this diagnosis and thinking, what am I dealing with? What's happening?
I think one of the biggest consequences of having FND is that you start to protect yourself and your surroundings and try to make your world much smaller so that you try to protect yourself from seizures or paralysis, whatever it is. If you're newly diagnosed, I beg of you to not shut out of the world, to continue to speak with your friends, speak with your family, go out to a park. Don't go into solitude and think that that's how you're going to get better. And even if we never get better, this is not a way to live life. Don't lose your life over this. Make sure that who you are is first in your mind and that FND is somewhere in the back. You may have a disability or an illness or a sickness, but that's not you. And having that type of mentality is going to help you push forward in your journey of trying to figure out what works for your brain, what works for your mind in terms of recovering. And that's what I wish I knew when I was first diagnosed, is that you are not this condition. You are not this illness. And all we need to do is keep pushing to be incrementally better, slowly, slowly, slowly. In terms of resources, I actually really love neurosymptoms.org. I've heard so many people say, like, all the doctor told me to do was go to this website and read it. I know it's really annoying because that doesn't give you any answers, but it actually is very helpful. And Dr. Stone spent a lot of time working on that. FND Hope's website is super helpful. My last thing is 3 things in it. Learn about window of tolerance, learn about the concept of neuroplasticity, and learn about predictive error. These 3 things, when I fully understood them, really helped me understand when I felt a trigger coming on, what was going on in the brain and what I needed to do to get it to reverse itself. Doesn't work 100% of the time, but it's better than nothing.
And is there anything that you think is not helpful at that first point of diagnosis?
It's all psychological, or this is psychological. That is the worst possible thing that you can say to someone with FND, because you are only giving them a portion of a much larger puzzle.
Thanks for all the work you're doing in this space. It's really important to have that lived experience voice, and especially because you have that gift, I suppose, and that talent, or you may not call it a gift and talent, for telling stories and telling this story from your own perspective. It's great that those things can come together, I think. We look forward to maybe having you on again sometime.
Thank you so much, Lana. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Seizure Turnaround. We were joined by investigative journalist Nadine Sebai. Next time on the Seizure Turnaround, can seizures unexpectedly and suddenly stop? We'll hear what it's like to spend half a decade in remission after over a decade of almost daily seizures. Until then, stay well.